So a final reflection, we asked, I don't know, about a week ago, I had been having this conversation with some guys, and we were all sort of saying, just in bafflement, not trying to control anybody, but just in bafflement, we were saying that so many young women seem to be committed to jobs and wasting the time that they could be creating a home, having children, taking care of those children, instead doing the kind of drudgery of work that guys have had to do to support what we thought was the important work of making a home and having children. So I asked women, are we just being guys who don't understand women, to write in? And we got a lot of letters. All of the ones, we haven't been able to go through all of them, but all of the ones we saw agreed with me. Now, obviously, people who are listening to the show are probably more likely to agree, but let me just read you a couple of things that people said, which I just thought were really interesting. This one is from Hannah. She says, I think most women would like to have kids and focus on them on being able to do volunteer work or to chase passion projects as their lives permit. After all, most of us choose career paths that allow us to do what we're passionate about, as opposed to men who often set passion aside in order to make more money. Two things are getting in our way: not just the shame that feminists suggest stay-at-home moms should feel for depending on another person for income, but the real, which is crap, by the way, because the income is both of yours because you're both involved in the project. But the real fear that that was me interjecting, but the real fear that a lot of girls have from seeing their own families fall apart as kids. Many feel that they need to keep at least one foot in the career pool just in case something doesn't work out in the relationships department. That's very smart. Also, she says, all of our finances are a mess. The idea that every person has to go to college has negatively impacted myself and my girlfriends. College debt has so financially destabilized us, as well as the men we're looking at marrying, that staying at home just isn't an option. This one's from Anonymous. One really got me. I'm 27 years old, and as long as I can remember, all I've ever wanted was to settle down and be a wife and mother. For the most part, I've kept this to myself. I've been embarrassed to admit such a lowly ambition out loud. When you think about being a mom as a lowly ambition, ask people what they think about their mother. Better yet, go up to someone who's bigger than you and insult his mother and find out how he feels about his mom. Your mom is basically the center of your universe because she's the person who shaped your life, and I don't see how that is a lowly ambition at all. She says, I've had little luck in the dating game. It's difficult to meet a man who wants to settle down when he can order a one-night stand as fast as he could a pizza. Women are so replaceable. For every one that doesn't put out, there's 10 more ready to jump into bed. Thank you, sexual revolution. From Nicole, both from my own experience and from talking to my friends, I've gathered that most women know they're missing out on having a family in their 20s and 30s, but don't know what to do about it. My friends and I desire a husband and children, but the men we have dated and met over the past few years were so disappointing and unimpressive that we'd rather be single and childless while we search for someone else. To give you context, my friends and I are engineers and lawyers with advanced degrees in our late 20s. It could be because I hang around a conservative religious crowd, but it seems to me that this discussion is often around an observation of women pursuing careers and not having families. Not that most women desire it, but they find it hard to achieve the families they want. From Cheryl, I'm approaching 50, and after examining my own life, college educated, married, no children, I've reached this conclusion: think twice before rejecting the enduring and self-sacrificing purposes of your biology for the transitory and self-satisfying purposes of your ideology. This is, like I said, this is not scientific. People who listen to the show are probably more sympathetic to the show and, reflect some of my own way of looking at the world. But it is true that when they examine what women want and they poll them, first of all, a majority of moms want to be home with their kids, would prefer to be home with their kids. Less of women who aren't moms, but that just means that having children is more satisfying and fulfilling in fact than it is in theory. When you imagine it, it may not be as fulfilling as it is when you have it. What they have found is there's this U-shaped curve that poor women and rich women are the most likely to stay home with their kids. And there's an economic reason for that, because when you're poor, people tend to marry people in their own class and financial state. So poor men tend to marry poorer women. And that means that to put the kid in daycare is probably going to be more expensive than the money that the mother would make going out to work. So it makes economic sense for her to stay home. Then once you get into the middle class men marry middle class women, and the woman is probably college educated, probably making a lot of money. The money that she would lose by leaving the workforce is more than the money that they would have to spend on daycare. So it makes more economic sense for them to have daycare. Once they get rich, however, once the man is rich, then the woman stays home because she can, because they can afford to lose that middle class income. So that says to me that if everybody had what they wanted, that women would be staying home. And the thing about that is, that just means, and every study shows this, that just means the left is talking for people, but they're not talking about people. They're talking about what they think people should want. They're not talking about what people really should want. And the shame is that they infest your imagination. It goes back to this again. It goes back to their trying to shape the way you imagine the world so that you feel obligated to their concerns instead of to your concerns. They want you to feel, oh, it's a lowly position to be a wife and mother. Oh, that's not enough. I want to work. Oh, the marriage might fall apart. I mean, jobs can fall apart too. The marriage might fall apart. All those things, they want to shape your imagination that way. So the world then looks more like what they want it to look like. And that's going to ultimately, because their philosophy makes people dependent, it's going to ultimately make you dependent on them, and then you can't change the world back to the way it ought to be, back to freedom, liberty, people making this decisions out of their own hearts and their own imaginations rather than the imagination of activists. That's it. The Klavanless weekend is upon us. You poor bums, I'm so sorry. But I'll be back on Monday. Survivors can gather here. I'm Andrew Klavan. This is The Andrew Klavan Show.